Okay, hello everyone. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you to Alliance Life Sciences webinar on Copay offset cards and the attitudes and experiences of stakeholders. My name is Art Jancarelli. I am the marketing manager for Alliance. We have some great information for you today. I'm going to give you a brief rundown of our agenda, introduce our presenters, and then we'll start. So today we're going to present some preliminary data on the attitudes and experiences of patients, pharmacists, physicians, and payers. We'll give you a little bit of an insight on our study methodology and how we came up with this data, and then an outlook on these copay programs moving forward. And then we will do a Q&A at the end if any of you have any questions. Our presenters today are Mohan Purushothaman and Dilip Fadnis. Mohan is our Executive Vice President here at Alliance, and Dilip is the Director of Syndicated Studies. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it to Mohan to give you some background.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Mohan Purushothaman. As Art just mentioned, I head up the pricing, reimbursement, market access practice within Alliance. And we are all extremely excited about this report on copay offset programs. Has been a very successful study from our perspective. And without taking too much time, I want to go right into what the study is about and to talk to you a little bit before Dilip goes through the details. Now, obviously, copay cards are become a much more than just looking as a way to reduce and increase market access. It's definitely becoming a strategic option for many companies, and I'm sure you will get to know more about this, some of the implications of this as we go through this. Obviously, these cards have the goal of reducing copay amounts paid by patients, and we found that patients typically get these cards from physicians, pharmacists, through internet and through mail as well. And now, from a manufacturer's perspective, this clearly gives them an option to very selectively offer discounts and in some way work hand in hand with overall contracting and other strategies that they may decide to pursue for the product. Now, it obviously comes in handy when these products are placed in a very high tier and is able to take a little bit of that pressure from the patients and continue to maintain market access. We were quite surprised as we went into the study that there are as many as 450 products today and increasing day by day, which have some form of copay offset program or the other. Obviously, this has also resulted in some controversies. Clearly, we are crossing some barriers in terms of the respective roles that physicians, payers, pharmacists, and others play in a traditional marketplace. So this is changing some of the rules of the game, and we can expect, obviously, some pushback from some of the players. So there are some controversies surrounding this. In this study, we have we have focused our attention mostly on, what's kind of the attitude and experiences from the real people who are directly in contact with this program. So we're talking about patients, physicians, pharmacists, and payers. So that's really what the study is about. And the study was put together. We gathered information from our own research, and some details will be provided by Dilip, but this was a major study investment that we made from Alliance. And we did both a qualitative as well as a quantitative approach to understanding some of the nuances of this program. And obviously, we went across cross-section of patients, physicians, pharmacists, and payers to provide us, their perspectives and understand this in much better detail. We also did not want to leave out the specialty pharmacy group. We went into that in a separate set of interviews. And from all of these, I think we have been able to come up with some very interesting findings. And I'm going to ask Dilip at this point to take it from here and walk you through some of the findings and more details to come here. So, thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Mohan. This is Dilip Fairness, and I'd like to add my welcome to that of Art. And we're going to do this brochure and this seminar. The topic of the webinar is Copay Offset Cards, Stakeholder Attitudes and Experiences. This is a very interesting study. We enjoyed doing it, and we have some very interesting findings. And I'm sure you will like to get some of the details that I'm going to present to you. As Mohan said, we spoke to the 4 major stakeholders in this game, namely the patients, the physicians, pharmacists, and the payers as well. And in the pharmacy, we also spoke to some specialty pharmacies who have a major role to play in these copay cards. So talking first about the first stakeholder, the patients. Patient, of course, is the major stakeholder because these cards are designed and provided for the patient. And patients love these cards. They said they're a blessing. And we had some focus groups with patients. We had 2 of them. And in the focus groups, we had patients who said, you know, I would not be alive without them. I would not be here today without them. So there is a tremendous liking for these cards. And for some of the biologics, the offsets are quite high. So we have products for which the copay offsets are about $500. So this is a big help for the patients, and in turn, they are appreciative of it. And the frequent validity of the cards is about 1 year, and that seems to be the common length. And when it's less than that, there is sometimes a problem because the card expires and the patient has to pay the full copay, and then they get what is called the sticker shock. So this is a good time frame to have to kind of ease the burden on the patients. The biggest source of cards for the patients are the doctors. They also get them in the mail, and many savvy shoppers now go to the internet and download these cards and get their own copay discounts. And also some companies, some pharmaceutical companies, provide them to the pharmacy, and the pharmacist in turn gives them to these patients, and that way they build their own loyalty to their pharmacy from these customers. We found that the average copay offset is about 70% of the copay, and that is based on a very wide sample, so it's about right. And some patients request to the physician to prescribe for them a brand that has an offset card, and the physicians accede to that request almost 100% of the time. So these copay cards do help build brand preference and brand loyalty for the patients. So that's a distinct advantage that is afforded by these cards. In the next slide, you will see one of our measurements with patients. So we asked patients how the cards fare on different criteria, and the rating of 1 would be that they don't like it, and 10 is that they like it. And the copay deduction amount was rated very highly at 8.2, so they're quite satisfied with it. And the ease of using it at the pharmacy is also pretty good. It's 8.6 rating, followed by clarity of information, 8.3. And the one place where there is a need for improvement here, as seen by patients, is in the length of time the cards are good for. That criteria got only a rating of 7.4, and this issue needs to be addressed. The maximum amount hour by the card is also quite satisfactory at 8.0, and so patients generally satisfied with the card, but there are some issues, there are some confusing points which we'll come to in a couple of minutes. Now going to the other stakeholder, the party that gives these cards. The other stakeholder is the physician, and we're going to speak about physician attitudes and experiences. Physicians also like these cards. They see many positive features about them, and overwhelming percentage of physicians said to us that they reduce the financial burden that the patient suffers from, and therefore they are in favor of these cards. On their side, it gives them a greater ability to prescribe newer and more expensive drugs, and this was an attribute that was rated so by about 52% of the physicians. So that prescribing flexibility is something that physicians love about these cards. Physicians themselves get these cards from the following sources. Drug reps, 95% of the physicians get it from them. Mail, 25% of the physicians. And internet, 17% of the physicians. And the general consensus among physicians is that drug companies should issue more copay cards. So this stakeholder is also aligned with our objectives of making it easy for patients to be able to get these products and have these cards to offset the copay. So in terms of specialty distribution, PCPs, about 66% said that there should be more copay cards issued. Cardiologists, 82% said that, and neurologists, 86% said that. So there is a wide buy-in of this copay concept among various physician specialties. One of the side effects of the copay cards is that they do impact patient compliance and persistence. And most physicians agree that copay cards have positively impacted patient compliance and persistence. And we define compliance as sticking to the regimen in terms of twice a day or thrice a day, whatever it is, and persistence being filling and refilling the prescription on time as prescribed. So when for these two measures, if you look at PCPs, 68% of PCPs and 78% of neurologists said that the compliance and persistence is improved because of copay cards. So that's a nice attribute to have. Now, another interesting phenomenon that might be of relevance to you is that our survey also suggested that samples are, at least in part, being replaced by copay cards. And this finding is of highest relevance for neuros, 64% of whom said that they are giving out more copay cards and they're replacing samples in that respect. Then, turning to the third stakeholder, the one stakeholder who handles these cards most often and touches more cards than anyone else is the pharmacist. And we're now going to talk about pharmacist attitudes and reactions about copay cards. Pharmacists feel that MDs should be giving out more copay cards and be more actively involved in them. And they find them easy to process and spend about 7 to 8 minutes a day. But with the busy schedules that many chain pharmacies have and the responsibilities on them for paperwork and administration, there is a room for improvement in the processing cards and the seamlessness nature of them. It's quite not there yet, so there is room for improvement. Pharmacists also feel that physicians are substituting copay cards for samples. And they state that most offsets fall in the range of $11 to $50. That is like a ballpark number. And the pharmacists themselves derive a lot of benefits from these copay cards. They do increase the revenue that the pharmacists bring up every day. They definitely help them build more customer loyalty, more persistence, and make drugs more affordable. So they're also a beneficiary of these cards. They do feel, though, that the clarity of information on cards is lacking, and a lot of time what's said on the card and what happens in the pharmacy is not the same thing. And that inconsistency is definitely there and needs to be looked at and looked into and improved upon going forward. Another source of problem for pharmacists is the patients, when they're dissatisfied with what they get in the pharmacy, as opposed to what was said to them in the physician office or what's said to them on the card, they get very upset. And there are long discussions between the pharmacist and the patient. And the pharmacists really don't have the time for this, really speaking. So that's a source of discontent for the pharmacist in respect of these cards. On this slide, it's a very telling slide. On this slide, you will see the drug classes for which pharmacists process cards. So we see cardiovasculars at the top, followed by dermatologicals, antidiabetics, GI, analgesics, anti-asthma, and so on down the line. The spread is pretty wide across 12 categories and more, and cardiovasculars top the list of the class of the products which are processed most often by the pharmacists with copay cards. We asked pharmacists which is the most time-consuming part of the copay cards in conversation with patients, and that is the discussions they have to have with patients is the most time-consuming part of the copay card activating process. The other things like activating the cards, filling out the paperwork, take a back seat to having to explain to patients why a certain thing is happening and why a certain thing is not happening is the most time-consuming part, and therefore requires work from pharma manufacturers to streamline this processing and this aspect of the cards. Pharmacists also feel that the compliance and persistency has improved with copay cards. And they're in a good position to observe this because they're there all the time and they fill in the refill prescriptions. So their observations are also very valid. And the 5 drug classes for which compliance has improved the best are the cholesterol reducing drugs, dermatology products, antihypertensives, other cardiovascular drug categories, and antidiabetics. Okay, so those were the 3 stakeholders we spoke about first. The next stakeholder I'm going to speak about are the payers. And the payers have somewhat different viewpoints. So our source here is based on 20 interviews with national and regional payers. And generally speaking, payers are not favorable towards copay cards. They see some benefits, but they have some reservations. And the thing that they do see is that the copay cards save patients some money and therefore give them more drug choices. They are not quite convinced about the effect on compliance. So more documentation will have to be provided in this respect to convince them of this attribute. When we ask them what they see as a future for the copay cards, about 50% feel that the number of copay cards will increase, and a third of them feel that the number will decrease because of payer resistance to copay cards. And of course, we're seeing some of this in the press. Caremark has gone forward and said that they're going to take out the cards from their formulary, which offer copay cards with them, those products. So, so there is some of that going on. Payers are predicting integration of copay cards and e-prescribing, and we're seeing this. We're doing a study on e-prescribing also, and we're finding out that doctors are actually emailing the copay cards with the e-prescription, and therefore they're working in tandem over there. The payers make some suggestions to suggest that that patient assistance programs for patients with true needs should be integrated with copay cards. and that there should be a true discussion or frank discussion about the true cost of copay therapy, copay cards, and the impact on therapy, outcomes, and things like that to better manage the formulary. So they have some suggestions, and we feel that in the future, more negotiation will result in a compromise between payers and pharmaceutical companies, and will lead to more smoother ride for copay cards. Copay cards are also viewed, for the following products, copay cards are viewed in a positive light. Products are Copaxane, Remicade, and Embrel. And these cards provide high cost savings, and therefore they're viewed in a positive light by the payers. Another big player in the copay cards game is the specialty pharmacists, and they're very involved, and their attitude and reactions are very important. So we studied them separately, and we're going to talk about them separately. There's about 30 specialty drugs that have copay cards, and the pharmacists feel that should expand the offering of copay cards and find ways to streamline their processing. And of course, we heard this before, but we're hearing it again from specialty pharmacies. They feel that through DTC advertising, more awareness should be created of the facility of copay coupons and copay cards. And they feel that the use of copay cards for specialty drugs will increase in the future because of the high cost and the high savings that the copay cards provide. And for many biologics, copay cards are vital to have, and the specialty pharmacists themselves keep a supply of cards on hand and give them out at the right time, at the appropriate times. And they also have persons helping patients with the processing of copay cards to facilitate the purchase of prescriptions. As you can see in this slide, copay cards specifically substantially reduce the cost of many specialty drugs. So if you take a drug like Humira, where the cost to patients before insurances could be about $3,500, the copay after the primary insurance is about $300, and Abbott is paying all of that up to $500. So copay cards are helping out a lot in the case of these expensive biologics like Avonex, Cellcept, Embrel, Humira, Pegasus, and Xeloda, and several others. As I said before, the specialty pharmacies have a special place in copay card processing, and therefore we'll talk more about them, more insights about them. Specialty pharmacists have individuals who are dedicated to assisting patients with the financial aspects of specialty medications. And these days, because the insurance companies have this information on file, they're easily downloaded and filled in by the specialty pharmacies, but it's a complicated transaction, so they need somebody who is experienced in this, and this particular person does that for them. And the reps, of course, work very closely with specialty pharmacies, and they supply all the cards and all the other paperwork that is required to complete these processes. And a few respondents in the specialty pharmacies had also said that physicians usually give patients copay cards and bring it to their attention because they realize that these drugs are very expensive, and the patient should definitely need help with that. And Novartis is one company that distributes copay cards for specialty drugs, for biologics, only through physician offices, and that is something that was noted to us by the specialty pharmacies. This is just a thumbnail sketch of the information we have on this topic. We have a lot of other information, maybe 5 to 10 times more information. And And all this came from a very large study we've been doing for the last 5 months. So this study began with a lit search, followed by focus groups with patients who actually have copay cards. That was the screening criteria. And in these focus groups, we learned a lot about copay cards and how valuable they are to patients and how much they love them. So we quantified these findings in an online survey and did that with 200 patients who have copay cards. So we got some very valuable data about copay cards from these patients. This was followed by the second stakeholder, the physicians, and we also did qualitative research with them through 20 depth interviews with PCPs, dermatologists, cardiologists to get the primary care and specialty viewpoints. And then we quantified that with surveys with primary care physicians, cardiologists, and dermatologists, and have actual output from these surveys in our project report. And we also spoke at length with specialty pharmacies, a very valuable part of the methodology, and got data from them. And a third leg of the survey methodology was speaking to pharmacists, who was a very cooperative bunch and very knowledgeable bunch on this topic. And we held 2 focus groups with them. They were very good groups, got a lot of good information. And this was then quantified in an online survey, which was completed by 200 retail pharmacists from the chain and the independent side. And the independents and the chains, they have different viewpoints on some areas, and those are differences also worth noting. Then we did interviews with payers to kind of cross-check this information to get their feedback on the information we had found so far, and of course got some very valuable input from them. And then all this was pulled together and analyzed, used some interpretation, and is now available in a nice, concise report. It's a PowerPoint deck with about 220 slides and gives a very thorough picture of the copay card segment. So coming to a close, I'd like to speak about the outlook for these cards, conclusion, and some additional information. Today, it's no big deal to have a copay card for a product. Those days are gone. Today, if you don't have a copay card, there is a deficiency. So the rules of the game have changed. And most stakeholders we spoke to feel that the use of copay cards will increase. And of course, there'll have to be some compromise with payers because they are part of the equation and one of the stakeholders, and therefore that negotiation has to begin based on some knowledge about information from your primary stakeholders. And for specialty drugs, the use of cards will definitely increase, but a lot of fine-tuning needs to be done with the card itself so that the user experience and the ROI is satisfactory to the sponsors also. And we have a lot of additional information about the survey and the study and in a brochure, and that can be obtained by writing to Arjun Karali, whose website, whose email address is given here and phone is given here, and he can provide you more information. So with that, I'll turn it back to Art.
Thank you, Bill. So I am going to open this up for Q&A. I am going to unmute all lines, so please, if you don't have a question that you'd like to ask, if you can just mute yourself, I would appreciate it. Okay, with that being said, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to jump in. Okay, I guess we don't have any questions. That's fine. If anybody feels like they've come up with something that they didn't think of on the spur of the moment here, I will be sending a follow-up email to all of you so you can reply to that. We'll give you a copy of the brochure. If you have any questions, we'll gladly answer them. And other than that, I'd just like to thank you for attending. And please do not hesitate to reach out to me if you'd like any additional information. Thanks a lot, everybody, and have a great rest of the day.